radio station that loves St Albans. Radio Verulam.
Welcome back to the Parent Show on Radio Verulam 92.6 FM. Tonight we're talking all about an event that's happening on the 23rd of November, the Sandringham School Mental Health Conference. And we're going to speak to another one of the experts who's going to present next week, and she's joining us on the phone now. Tamara Dawn is from the an emotional freedom technique specialist. Hi, Tamara.
Hi, how are you?
Great, and thanks for joining us on the Parents Show.
You're welcome.
The first question you have to tell us is, what is an emotional freedom technique specialist, and what do you do?
Okay, well, emotional freedom techniques was created in the 1980s by a specialist, a clinical psychologist, Roger Callahan, and he found that if you tap on the points where an acupuncturist would normally stick needles, it can actually release things like negative emotions, trauma, anxiety, fears, phobias, and lots more. And so he developed a technique called thought field therapy, which then was adapted, and from there, in the 1990s, EFT, emotional freedom techniques, was created. So as an EFT practitioner and trainer, what I do, I specialise with working with stressed mums in particular, and I have online courses, and they can see me one-to-one as well. And what will happen is that I will either tap on particular points on their body, particularly on the face mainly and the hands, or they will tap on themselves, and they will use those tapping points to actually release negative emotions. It's like if you imagine that the acupuncture points are connected to meridians or energy lines, then it's like garden hose pipes, and when you have a kink in a garden hose pipe, the water stops flowing. And when you have a kink in the energy lines, the energy stops flowing. And when you tap on these acupuncture points, it releases that kink and the energy can flow. And when that happens, the negative emotions release and you feel calmer, happier, more peaceful, or it can even release traumas.
And is this a relatively new area, Tamara?
Yes, I mean, it's only been around since, in its first form since the 1980s, but really, I'd say it hasn't been around that many years in the UK, but it's a growing area, and it's actually even being used on the NHS for anxiety in some areas.
That's fantastic. And is it for children, teenagers? What age group can you use the therapy on?
It's absolutely incredible. You can use it on any age. Although I specialise with mums, and I empower mums to use it with their children, so that those children will then grow up with a self-help technique that they can use for the rest of their lives. You can actually use it with babies. So I've used it on tiny babies. I use it with mums in pregnancy, but I've used it on babies to help them with feeding, to help them with crying and sleeping. With toddlers, you can use them for tantrums, or if toddlers fall over and they're upset, you can also use tapping. Tapping is another word for EFT, sorry, just to clarify.
Yes, I'm familiar with tapping. I had heard of that before. Is it exactly the same thing?
Yes, it is, yes. And for, older children, you can use it for bullying, for if they've got friends problems, school stress, goal setting, exam stress, peer pressure, interview skills, anything.
And can I ask, Tamara, hi, this is Seema. When you say it releases this negative energy, the negative thoughts, is it like, I'm trying to understand the effect it will have on your mental health at the time or your physical health, and then is it something that you need to do a few times a week or every time you feel stressed? How does it actually work logistically?
Great question. Yeah. So when you tap on those acupuncture points, it releases the negative emotions, which means that the negative emotions dissipate and you're left feeling calmer. So it really affects your mental health and your mental well-being. And the way it does that, there's a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is in charge of releasing the stress hormone cortisol. And what research has shown is that with tapping, it reduces the cortisol levels. So that's why you're left feeling calmer.
Right, and so actually it'll have an immediate effect. Is that what you're saying?
It can be immediate and instantaneous. What I encourage, because most of the mums that I work with are stressed, they're overwhelmed, they're exhausted, they're feeling anxious. And so I encourage them to create a tapping habit of doing 5 minutes of tapping a day so that they can start chipping away at the underlying stresses that are being caused in their lives. And when it becomes their habit, they can then actually use it in moments of stress. For example, I used it when I was walking with my mum one day, and she tripped over and she fell over a stone bench, and she gashed the corner of her eye. And so I had to take her to A&E and stitches and blood. So I tapped with her while she was having all that treatment because it was literally a tool that I knew so well. It was like that was my first go-to place, whereas if otherwise I probably would have panicked or something. But then I was able to use it on myself, because after the whole situation had finished, I suddenly was actually really upset, and I remember seeing flashbacks in my mind of seeing my mum fall and just, seeing the wound and the blood. And so immediately I started tapping on myself to release those images and to release my feelings of upsetness, and somehow I felt it was my fault, so I released the guilt, and now it's just gone, the emotion's gone, and I can completely think about that experience with no problem at all. Of course, it wasn't a major one, but you can imagine with major traumas where there are flashbacks, particularly with something like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, you can literally very simply release the trauma. I mean, with that, I wouldn't say do it on yourself. You'd have to see a practitioner for sure.
And how popular, do you know, how popular is this technique with, let's say, teenagers?
With teenagers, I don't know the answer to that. My daughter uses it. She used it for her exams. She used it. She a while ago, she came home from school. She was walking home and she heard a scream, and then she looked and she saw this woman crying because her dog had just been run over, and she came home really upset, and so immediately we did some tapping and she was able to just release that. It's really powerful.
It's a shame sometimes it's difficult for teenagers to, I know, perhaps with other forms of stress relief, it doesn't seem, I'm not sure whether it's fair for me to say trendy enough or cool enough for them to actually embrace these techniques that actually could be helpful to them. I know. But some do. For example, I trained one mum, and she told me how her son was revising for his end-of-year exams. I think he was 15 at the time, revising for his end-of-year exams. And he confided in her the night before that he was really anxious and scared about failing and scared that he hadn't done enough revision. So, and his anxiety levels were around a 9 out of 10 when they started. And within a few minutes of tapping, they were down to a 0. And he was like, I can do this. I'm feeling really calm. Can we tap every night?
Well, that's fantastic. What a great and simple release. I mean, it's just, well, hopefully it'll become more and more widespread. And do you ever find, Tamara, that there's people that it just doesn't work on?
I would say 80% of people that I've personally worked on one-to-one, it works really, really well, quickly and easily. I would say another, 15% are a bit more tricky. You just have to work a bit harder to get the results that you want. And I would say 5% probably, doesn't work. Not at all.
Right, well, that's a pretty good success rate. And Tamara, just before we let you go, can you give us any tips for parents if they want to explore tapping? What would you say to them?
Absolutely. I would say do 5 minutes of tapping a day. It will make a massive, massive difference in your life. From my website, tomorrowdawn.com, you can download a free de-stress video and an explanation video to get started straight away. I'm writing a book at the moment called Get Your Sanity Back for mums to regain their calm, enjoy their kids more and get more done. Mums who have done my programme have said things like, I've stopped needing that glass of wine at the end of the day, my phobia's disappeared, my period pains have gone, my husband asked me why I'm so happy, what have I been doing. They even say, I've stopped spending money on myself to make myself feel better because I feel so good. So the list goes on. I mean, that's just a handful that comes to mind at the top of my head. So I would say, just do it, 5 minutes a day. You've got nothing to lose.
Making the husband suspicious.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. And you'll be at the conference on the 23rd of November.
Yes, I'm very excited to be there. I'll be running workshops for professionals, for students, and for parents.
That's excellent. Tamara, thanks so much. We're going to put your website up just for our listeners in case they're listening to the podcast. Can you just give us a website one more time?
Yes, it's tomorrowdawn.com.
Excellent. Tamara, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you for having me.
All the best.
Thank you. Bye.
The Parent Show is sponsored by Neve Solicitors.
Neve Solicitors are proud to sponsor the